There it is. There's my update saying it's on. The presentation has started. So welcome everyone. We are going to start right at 12 just because, you know what, people will trickle in. We won't have to hear them come through doors. Thank you all for joining. Really exciting. We had this probably sold out within a day, less than a day even. So obviously this is a hot topic. Just to let you know for yourself and for any of your friends that maybe didn't get a ticket to join for today, we will be putting this up on our YouTube channel. I'll put that in the comments later, but it's pretty easy to find. I think it's the Goldmind project, YouTube Goldmind project, pretty easy. And as well as you can find more information on that on our LinkedIn or Facebook. So feel free, if you have the time, just go click follow. You can always see what events are coming up, and we're going to try and put as much as we can onto YouTube so that you can keep watching. So today from the Goldmind project, we have Andrew Vink, who is our president. He will be managing the, I guess, the whole Zoom presentation part. He'll be muting you, unmuting you as necessary. I do ask that if you notice that you are unmuted, just to keep it on mute, just so that there's no, everybody can hear the presentation. As for myself, I am the director of green projects. So with the Goldmind project, we try really hard to, or one of the things we aim to do is help get professionals to help other professionals. So today we're going to have Yanik, a data scientist from WestJet. He's going to be discussing how we got into the field, as there is no data science degree, and how you can do the same. First of all, just format for the evening or for the day. Oh my gosh, I'm already in weekend mode. Questions will be afterwards. Yanik does have a pretty lengthy presentation, I imagine. I saw it before, and I don't know how quick you'll go through it all, but it seems like there's a lot of content. So we'll try and have a question period at the very end. But if your question doesn't get answered, feel free to shoot him a message on LinkedIn. I always try and push this. Try LinkedIn, go and add people. I think that's the new way now of getting a hold of people, because there's way less networking events out there. But for questions as well, please put them in the chat box if you can find it. It's usually at the very bottom. And then that way we don't have a whole bunch of voices and people speaking over each other. So I'll say them out loud at the end of his presentation. But without further ado, Yanik has actually come on to our team for the Goldmind project as a volunteer to help with our own data management. So that's going to be a really exciting new addition. So thank you, Yanik. And yeah, I will let you talk because I'm a little jumbled up here.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm just going to share my screen here. Can you see it correctly?
Yep, it looks good.
Okay, perfect. All right. Yes, as Marika said, I'm going to talk about data science today. So, and yeah, talk about how I got into the field without having a data science degree, and how everyone that has like a science degree could do the same pretty much. So I'm just going to go over an introduction about myself, then talk about what is data, what is data science. I'm going to talk a little bit about like what type of data science we do at WestJet, then types of roles within data science. So there's not just data scientists, there's many other roles that can be in the field and that will be needed in that field too. Then what are the skills that you need to get into that field, and how the future of data science looks like. So just talking about me, I have a background in aerospace engineering. I'm from Spain, so I've got my degree there. I started working for an airline in Spain called Vueling Airlines that's based in Barcelona. And I started as a data analyst in revenue management. So basically in the commercial part of the airline, where we set the prices of the flights. I worked there for 3 years, just developing my skills. And then I decided to move to Canada when I got hired by WestJet to do the same thing, data science, in the same commercial area of the airline. So worked always in the airline industry, but I basically went developing my data science skills through my career. Then at WestJet and Welling, I worked in the revenue management department. For the ones that are not familiar with it, is an area that's located in the commercial area of the airline. And basically what we do is play with the supply and the demand to change the prices of the flights over time. As you can imagine, there's a lot of data involved in that. So my team is responsible of bringing to the analysts all the data that they need to make decisions on prices, on price changes. Here's just like an illustration of a flight that when you go in there, you know that like many different people have paid different prices. That is because of the supply and demand, and that we are always changing the prices very dynamically. So again, like a lot of data involved. Then I'll just go over, like many of you might be familiar with like what data is, but just like have a quick definition and some areas where you can actually find data. So data is everywhere, and even like every day more and more with the world being more digital. We can define data as a collection of like facts, as like numbers, words, observations, measurements, just to describe things, right? So anything can have data. I have here some examples like COVID cases in numbers by province, by country, website traffic, so how many people is looking at your website, current prices, oil and gas prices, stock trading transactions, air ticket prices, a bunch of them. And here's like an example of like how data can be represented in those fields. So again, a lot of data in the world. Just so in my field of expertise, some of the data that we look at is, for example, the visits that we've got on the website, how many people is looking at the flights, right? To have examples of how much demand we'll have, how many bookings do we have, how many people are actually buying flights, so how much demand do we actually have. Then we also look at different types of like loyalty members to see how different the different guest segments are. So for example, a business traveler that has a gold status might buy in a different like the different pattern than someone that is just going on vacation. Other things that we look at WestJet from like the operations point of view, for example, is fuel consumption. So are the planes taking the most optimal flight path to burn less fuel and have that an optimal number of them. A lot of data in there. So just so you have an idea how much the data has grown worldwide in the last 10 years, it has multiplied by 25. And today we have about 50 zettabytes of data in the world. That's about 1 billion of terabytes. So think about like this little like hard drive that you buy that it's like 1 terabyte and that you can never fill up because there's a lot of space in there. Well, there's like 1 billion of those full of data in the entire world nowadays. So there's a need for like people to analyze all this data and take like insightful conclusions out of that. Okay, so now we're gonna go into data science. Now that we have set an introduction about data, so what is data science? So maybe have you heard about data science, kind of like a buzzword of like, oh yeah, like we're doing data science, we're doing machine learning, artificial intelligence. So data science it's a field of study that basically combines business expertise, programming skills, and mathematics and statistics skills to finally extract meaningful insights from the data. And it has different steps on that process. So first of all is define a goal. What do we want to achieve with this data? The second one is get the data. So analyze the data. Can you hear me well?
It's a little bit muffled. Is there anything in front of your mic?
No, I can just maybe get closer.
That sounds good for me.
Yep.
Anyone confirm that sounds good for them?
Yep.
Okay, better.
Yeah, cool.
Thanks.
Sorry for that. Okay, so the first step is define the goal. So from a business point of view, what are we trying to achieve with that data? Second part is getting that data, so actually recollecting that. Third one, cleaning, like the data always comes with like, I don't know, different fields and stuff that can be a little difficult to analyze. So cleaning that, then enriching the data with new fields and more rich stuff that we can get. We're gonna go over that in more detail in a second. Then find insights and visualize this data to have a big picture of it. And then deploy machine learning algorithms, so apply some statistics to get some more in-depth conclusions about that, and then iterate. So always being trying to improve that process overall. So the first part is define the goal. So here's where we actually work with the business a lot, having the business requirements, depending on the industry. In my case, aviation, but it can be like oil and gas, banking, like a ton of different industries, so that we understand what we're trying to solve and what is the data that we're gonna need for that. And normally we work a lot with like business owners and subject matter experts that also data scientists are, because they always work in the field, right? So I just have a quote from Einstein here that says that if I were given an hour to save the planet, I would spend 59 minutes defining the problem and 1 minute solving it. Just like it defines the importance of that step in data science, of like having very clear the goal and the problem that we're trying to solve. So the second step would be get the data. So actually, the data can come from like many different places. It can come from the internal system, so internal databases from the company where one is working. It can come from like open data sources like government websites. It can come from third-party vendors. So a lot of like just companies sell data, right? They collect data from different parts and then they sell it as a product. And then also web scraping, so just from other websites. Those are just like different sources so that we can get data from. In the WestJet case, we get data basically from our internal sources that are a SQL Server, Oracle, Microsoft Azure in the cloud, or Excel. Here we're also gonna go through an example of like how this process can be applied to just a very easy user case. This is the electricity consumption of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom in his house, basically. So then we have here by hour and by day how many kilowatts hour we're spending. Well, he is spending on that. So it's just the data set that we're going to use. This comes from an open source data website. And we're just going to use it as an example. So the third step, would be explore and clean the data. This is one of the longest steps of the process because there's always like things that we have to clean in the data and missing data and a lot of like stuff that we have to fix, right? So first of all, getting familiar with the data, understanding what do we have and what everything means. Then make sure that the variable types are consistent, that like the characters are strings, the numbers are integers, that we have, if we have binary numbers, if we have like decimal numbers, just to make sure that every variable is correct. Then just make sure that we remove the spaces and other special characters that like can come with data issues sometimes. So just make sure that everything is nice, and then just check the completeness of the data. So if we're looking at the full year, just make sure that we have data for all the days of the year. Right? So in this case, we have some errors on the data, like these three highlighted cells have like characters that are not supposed to be there. So in this case, we would clean the data and just make sure that everything is nicely. The fourth step would be to enrich the data. So enhancing the process and refining of the raw data that's coming from us. That can be like adding new fields and columns just to make sure that we have all the data that we need, or bringing external data sets to enrich that data and have it like more and more variables with it. It also implies defining the granularity. So for example, if we're looking at the hour level, so a consumption by hour, it won't be useful if we have the consumption by year, right? So we have to make sure that the granularity of the data that we have is consistent of what we need. At WestJet, to do that process, we use a couple of tools. One of them is Alteryx, which is a coding tool that is a drag and drop tool. So it's very easy to learn, and it's very useful to do data cleansing. We also use R for that, which is a more traditional coding language, and we're going to see more about that. But basically, here on our example data set, we have the consumption by hour, and we have a column with the dates. And to enrich the data, we created new fields. For example, the day of week, the year, the month, and the season. That can be useful for our analysis afterwards. The fifth step would be to find insights and visualize this data. When we're working with big data sets, sometimes just looking at some rows of the data, it's not enough to have a sense of what we're looking at. So it's always nice to create a visualization and see that all the data points that we have visual. Also, we can get insights out of this data and get also conclusions without even building any models or anything. Just looking at the data on a high level and big picture perspective, it already can give us a big conclusion. So at WestJet, for example, we use Tableau to create visualizations. It's good and quick for visualizations for data science projects, and we have a server set up so that everyone can access it. And it's very friendly, and the visualizations you can see the data very well. Here we have a couple of examples of dashboards that we have. Also, it has a big community and support for users, so it's a very good tool. On our example before, here we can see how some visualizations were made out of that electricity consumption data. So here it shows that there's very many ways of slice and dice the data, right? In this first graph, you can see data consumption by weekends over weekdays. So it's just a visualization that shows very quickly that during the week, there's way more electricity consumption than during the weekend, right? Here we can see that by calendar. So we can see that December and January, there is more consumption because it's winter. So heat is on. And then here we have the same kind of visualization on a calendar year, but we also have by the time of day. So we can see that during the day, there's more consumption than during the night, right? So many very ways of just plotting and having insights from the same data. One of the final steps is deploy machine learning. So I'm just going to go over a little bit what machine learning is. Machine learning is a branch of artificial intelligence that with algorithms that allows to learn without being explicitly programmed. So artificial intelligence tries to reply human behaviors in looking at the data, and then machine learning are a set of algorithms that basically use statistics to reply that with the data. There's different algorithms that we can use depending on the problem that we're trying to solve. So if we're wanting to predict a category, we would use a classifying algorithm. If you want to predict a quantity, we use regression, either multivariable or linear regressions, depending on the problem that we're trying to solve. Then also anomaly detections when we're trying to clean out the data out of outliers, or clustering if we're trying to make a classification and clustering the data into different clusters. So we're just going to go over some examples of that so that you guys have an idea. So that here there's a couple of regressions, time series regression. So the blue part is the data that we have historically, and then we are forecasting what is going to happen in the future with a time series algorithm. Then we have a linear regression, which is basically an estimation of all the data plots and just a mean of where is the average of that. And then we can predict basically the weight of someone based on their height. And it's not gonna be perfect, but at least it's gonna be a fit that is gonna give us an idea of where the average it is, right? And then we have clustering. If we have data points that are distributed like that, we can run a clustering algorithm, and it will group that into different groups, right, that are similar between them. And we're going to see an example of how do we use clustering at WestJet. Then the last step is to iterate. So iterate is basically either automate the process from start to end so that every time that we have new data available, all this workflow runs automatically. And the data scientist, or like the person that is taking care of that, has set up that one time. And then once the data is refreshed, it just do that over and over again with the new data to kind of like improve the models and just refresh the insights that we're getting out of that. Iterate can also be try different models, change the data cleansing, or improving the new fields, or enhancing the data that we're using. But basically, the data science is never static. It's always evolving. So every time that we have a problem and we solve it, we can come back a month ago and then make some changes on it and try to improve the insights that we're getting out of it. Now I'm just going to go over some data science at WestJet. So how do we see that data science at WestJet, and how do we leverage that in revenue management, right? So in my team, or the revenue analytics team at WestJet, and our vision is to help and enrich the pricing and revenue management analysis through ensuring data quality, to ensure that like all their data is clean, on time, and that it's refreshed every day. We explore new data sources with new data that's available for them. We create reports and dashboards for the analysts to have insights about what's happening in the market. We support and train self-service tools so that they can extract the data by themselves. We implement automation so that we don't have to be refreshing and doing manual stuff every day, and everything gets automated with the less human interaction possible. And we bring data science into revenue management, basically. So on that process of like setting the prices for the flights, to make it easier for the analyst and the business to make decisions and to make optimal decisions. So this is a little bit the analytics curve that every business go through, and for sure, like at WestJet, like we went through the same process. First of all, is we have a lot of data and we don't know what to do with it. That's how like every business kind of like starts. Then we start collecting the data, but it's very difficult to access that. Then we start getting questions from the leadership saying, "Oh, we have a problem. Can you check out the data and tell us like what is happening here?" And then we do that. And then when that question comes recurrent, we build a report or a dashboard so that they can self-serve and actually go and check the data by themselves. And then we start getting into more predictive analytics. So now bringing data science into revenue analytics, we look at being proactive and seeing patterns before the business can see them, so that we can give them recommendations and be ahead of what's going to happen. So kind of like forecasting and doing predictive analytics, right? All right, so now we've said a little bit like what is data science, how do we do data science at WestJet, right? So as I said before, data science can have a lot of different roles. There's just not data scientists. We need some different roles to be able to do the whole process of getting the data to finally like get machine learning and iterate that process. So the first role that we can find is a data analyst. The data analyst basically interprets the data and works very closely with the business to make decisions. So it basically works on the step like first and fifth mostly to define the goal of that, and then find insights once the data is built and there's insights to take away from. Then we have data engineers. The data engineers basically work with the backend of the data. So once they get the goal from the data analyst, they're the ones that actually go to the databases or to the external vendors and say, hey, we need this data to solve this problem. And then they clean it, they enrich that, and they give it back to the data analyst to find insight and visualize it. They also work a little bit on deploying machine learning and working on statistics, but that's mostly what the data. So the data scientists are a little bit cross-functional, and they do a little bit of everything in the process, but they mostly work on the deploying machine learning, so on the statistical and math and mathematical solving problems, right? But they are involved in the whole process. Here I have another chart that comes from PwC. It's just an analysis about the different roles in data science, and it basically say a little bit the same that I showed in the slide before. Here we have the different skills that are needed for like an analytics application. So the domain knowledge of the business, the visualization to tell the story about the data, the data governance and engineering, that is basically how do we store the data. Then the management and curation, that's how we clean that and how we enrich the data. The analytical approach, that is how do we show that, and how do we after that apply the machine learning and statistical analysis to it. And then depending of there's like different roles. So from the analytic roles to the data science roles. And in the data science roles, again, we can find data analysts, the data engineers, and the data scientists with the different split that I've gone over in the slide before. All right, so now that we know how which type of roles do we have in data science, we're going to go over which skills do we need to go over those roles, right? Which skills do we need and where we can get them. So in data science, nowadays, there's like a wide range of different backgrounds that are working on it. So there's like from mathematics, statistics, operation research degrees that are like way more technical and based on the machine learning and statistical techniques, from like a whole range of like different types of engineering degrees, like myself, and I work with like industrial engineers and all of the like different types of engineers, that even like oil and gas engineers that are like converted to data science, right? We also have a wide range of like science degrees, like neuroscience, and as well as business degrees. So there's like a wide range of backgrounds that are today working in data science, because it's a mix of a lot of different skills that are coming in together. So there's also a new data science university courses that are emerging due to the need of that. But honestly, they're like 1 to 2 year old. So the students that like have done those degrees haven't even graduated yet. There's a couple of those degrees here in Calgary that are noted in the slide. And there's like, of course, way more outside of Calgary. The universities are kind of like just starting to see the need for data scientists and data analytic backgrounds. So they are building those degrees with this mix of skills that are needed in the field. Okay, now we're going to go over the main skills that we need to do data science. The first one is domain knowledge. Even if you are like in research or industry, you need like a basic knowledge of that industry that you're working. And again, we've seen that before. The industry, like there's data science in every industry pretty much. And the domain knowledge is something that can be learned just by working with the data for a short period of time and like understanding how the industry is working. For example, at WestJet, we had a lot of like oil and gas engineers that has joined on the aviation industry and like in the data science department, and just in a range of like 6 months to a year, they become experts in the airline domain by learning how the mechanics of that goes. The second skill is mathematics, statistics, and machine learning. So basically technical skills, and that can come from many degrees. So every like, I don't know, statistics, mathematics, engineering, science degrees, in the first years, you learn basic calculus, algebra, and it's just basically basic statistics and mathematics that you get from there. And again, those can also be learned through online courses and online university courses if if that's what the person is missing. Then the third one is coding. So coding is one of the things that nowadays, like, it's, I would say, like the one that like data scientists need to learn the most. And there's a lot of online courses that are teaching this part in conjunction with the machine learning one. That's also like something that in the computer science, statistics, mathematics, engineering degrees is teach it. And just having a basics of that, and then doing like course of like introduction to R, introduction to Python, you can get a sense of like how can you code and how can you leverage that. The first one is having database understanding. So basically knowing how to collect the data and how to store that. Honestly, this is learned in a computer science degree mostly, but you also learn that through the professional experience. It doesn't matter like the type of industry that you come from. I'm sure that like there's data stored somewhere, right? And either if it's like your IT team or your data science team on that company, like it's storing the data in some way in some of those platforms. So it's a little bit just like being curious and understanding how this data is stored and how the mechanics of this data is working. The fifth one is the data visualization and reporting. So having the skills to be able to present this data and being able to get insights out of that. To visualize this data, either if it's Tableau, Power BI, or even if it's like in Excel, doing graphs, right? Just the power of like visualization and just practicing. Then what's very important also is just like practice. So even if you have all those skills, if you don't do like work from like the beginning to the end and you don't practice, you will never get better at those skills and be able to do that. So there's many ways to practice. One of them is just like in a professional environment. So if you work, even if in a role that like it's not data science, but you have data that is available to you, you can be curious about it and just like start looking at what problems you can solve and what insights you can get out of that. And just using some of those softwares, practice a little bit of it. Another way is also doing just personal analysis. There's a lot of like open source data in the internet, like, I don't know, right now, COVID cases, right? So just for a personal interest, just like trying to like get the data. So you work on those like databases and get the data skills, and then trying to like shape it and take out the try to graph it just for your own purposes and be able to practice with that. Then we also have a big community of data science. Even here in Calgary, there's an artificial intelligence meetup once a month that I encourage all of you to join. Is very interesting. They show you like there's every month there's a different company presenting, and they basically present on machine learning and how they use different techniques, what they do with the data, and how to leverage that. All the different softwares like Tableau also have big communities, and they do user group and conferences that the user groups in Calgary are totally free, and you're able to see how people in different industries use Tableau and how they visualize the data in different ways. So now I'm just gonna go over like how do I got those skills, which is a mix of my career path. So in my background in engineering, I acquired the mathematics and statistics skills and some basic coding. Then in my first years of working, I got the industry knowledge that there's pretty much no other way than getting that just like start working, right? Then just doing basic visualizations and some reporting, doing database understanding too. So when you start working, you see how the companies store the data and where you actually can get that, and then just start practicing. Like once you have your first job, you just like start practicing and joining all those skills together. Then when I joined WestJet, obviously like all the ones before, like you have to like keep practicing them and just keep applying them. But I had more opportunities here in Calgary to like join the community, AI community, and join also conferences about about AI and machine learning and visualization tools and just data cleansing and all the different steps of the process in general, and keep improving those skills. All right, now we're gonna go over some resources for those that are interested in that but are missing some of those skills. So just about like math, statistics, machine learning, coding, and databases, there is some courses available in online platforms. One of them is Coursera. That is very useful. It has like, I've noted here 3 of the courses that I found that like they're very useful for people that are starting in the field of data science. There's also another website called Data Camp that has like a wide range of data science courses from the first steps that we've mentioned before till the last ones on the process. So very useful material, and most of those courses are free also. So it's just like out of curiosity, if you want to like check it out and see what is the level of the course and what they're offering, I encourage you to check those out. Then about visualization, reporting, and just practicing in general, Tableau has a very good it's called Makeover Monday, and it's basically every Monday they post a different data set that is open source, and they encourage the whole community to make a visualization out of it. So sorry, it's an initiative, that's the word I was looking for before. It's a very good initiative that from Tableau, and basically you have to get the data that it's just posted online by them. You read the article that gives you a business knowledge or just like a little background about like what is the data about. Then you analyze and visualize this data. You can publish it in the Tableau public, which is totally free and open source also. And then you can join basically a webinar that's about Tableau experts that are reviewing how they did their visualization. So you practice on doing your own, and after that you see how experts did the same thing that you did to improve and learn from like the mistakes that you've done, or just like see how you can do things better. Here are a couple examples. Actually, the energy example about electricity consumption that we'll look at before is an example of a Makeover Monday. And here there's another one. It's I don't know, it's kind of interesting. It's the prices of beers in baseball stadiums in the US. So different ways to like visualize it, and very, very interesting. If I would encourage you to just like check it out and try it if you have like interest to build those visualizations and reporting skills, and also to practice with data. All right, just to finalize, I want to talk a little bit about the future of data science. So what it would look like in the next years, and where is the need of like more data scientists and more data science people in general. So at the beginning of the presentation, we saw the growth from 2010 to 2020, where the data has basically like multiplied by 25 in the whole world. Well, now we have the forecast from 2020 to 2025, which it will again multiply by more than 3. So if we needed more data scientists and people that like can manage and work with data until today, in the future, it's going to be even more. And this forecast, it was done before COVID. But just like now with like the current situation that we have with COVID, we'll have an incremental effect on that, because all the companies are looking for doing the things more digital and having like less human contact to apply social distancing, and just being more digital in general, right? So there's going to be more and more data, more and more need for automation, and for people that are capable of doing those. All right, this was my presentation about data science. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Yeah, just wanted to give a perspective of the process that we follow doing data science, the skills that requires of it, and some material that you guys can use if you want to improve some of those skills. Thank you.
Thank you. so much, Yanik. I'm sure if we were actually in a room, we'd all be talking right now. So I do have some questions here in the group chat. First of all, I'm going to address the one that was kind of later on. It was about if we're going to get this presentation, and yes, so what we will do is we will put it on YouTube. For those that missed out at the beginning, we do have a YouTube channel. If you scroll all the way up to the beginning of the chat, I have placed it there. So you will definitely see the entire presentation posted there. And as for the PowerPoint, I imagine, Yanik, we're able to send that out as well. Is that okay?
Yeah, that should be fine.
Okay, well then we'll send that out in an email as well to all of the participants. So stay tuned for that. And so let's go up. We had a few other questions above here other than the, are you able to hear? Does WestJet use Python? As the first one.
So honestly, like R and Python are basically, I'm not gonna say they're the same because there's a lot of like, but it's like personally, there's some data people that prefer R and someone that prefer Python. Python is best for some of the things and R is best for like some other things. There is people at WestJet that use Python for sure. It's just that in my team, we mostly use R because we're more familiar with it. And for us to do like data modeling is just, it works best for us. But either or, they're both very useful. And for sure, there's people at WestJet that use Python.
Perfect. Okay, another question was actually, it wasn't a question, it was a comment. It was EdgeUp. Have you ever heard of that? And Andrew, you had mentioned that EdgeUp is a program offered by the CED, the Calgary Economic Development, and that they just had 2 intakes. I'm not really too sure about this program. Have you heard of it before?
I haven't.
No?
No.
Andrew?
So EdgeUp was a program that was offered by Calgary Economic Development. I think they started in March or so, and they had 2 uptakes or intakes for this course. It was basically somewhat of a boot camp into how to transition into this industry. My understanding is that they ran out of funding. I'm not sure if they're getting more funding at all, but it was a free program offered to the participants. So it was a really awesome way to get introduced and get some hands-on instruction. So
That's fantastic.
yeah, so people could contact Calgary Economic Development directly if they want to know more. Jeanette Sutherland is the director of that program.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, the more emails they get, maybe they'll start up another program. So who knows? The other one that I don't know if you guys have all heard of Meetup, but I do recommend checking it out. It's not just for data science; it's for all, I guess, all industries, all topics that you could possibly discuss. And there's a Meetup Calgary, and yeah, it's just, I mean, right now with COVID, it's a little up in the air how they probably go forward with that, but I'm sure in the next 6 months or so, things will start getting back to normal. But it's a great way to start meeting people in these industries. When it's usually just go for beers and talk about AI or talk about data or whatnot. And so, and we know a big part of getting into a new industry is really getting into the industry's culture. And that's a big part of it. So I definitely recommend, I know the link there is not actually highlighted, and it's really long. So I just copy and paste that. I searched out all of the AI ones, so you can go and check out those, or you can just do your own search in meetupcalgary.com or meetup and then /Calgary. There was another couple questions, I believe, in here. Yes. We have at interviews, how do you prove you have the skills? For traditional classes, you have project work or some verification or grade for your skills. So how does that work for data science?
So one of the things I would recommend, so basically in the interviews, like, I don't know, any like science degree background helps. Any online course about coding and data visualization is good also. Then what a lot of companies do is, for example, there's Tableau Public, where you can do Makeover Mondays and just post your visualizations in there that you've done. And then you can share that with the company that you're doing an interview, or show that in the interview. Like, this is the data that was given me, and that's what I've reached of like what I've done with it, right? And just showing examples that what you've done in the past with data will help a lot. For example, for us as WestJet, we've had many people come to the interview with their laptop and showing us what they've done, and it really like helps on like understanding how they think and what they're capable of, if they're able to like explain you the steps that they follow to do that, and take out a conclusion out of that data.
That makes a lot of sense. Come kind of with a profile, portfolio of your work.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Cool. The next one was, we have a comment. Evolve U Calgary is also accepting applications for their full stack developer course. Great. Okay. Then there's, what are the minimum skills I should aim to become employable in the data science domain? And second part, and how long a duration should I plan to gain them?
Okay, I'll start with the second one. The duration, it really depends on where you're starting from, right? If you don't have any of those skills, obviously the duration will be longer than if you already have most of the skills and you're only looking for some of them. Then for which skills you should aim to like start to be employed of that, you should have like a basic of all of them, or at least know a little bit. But I would say that like the most important ones would be the math and statistics knowledge and the data processing part. And then from there, like it really depends on the role that you're applying for. So if you're applying for like a junior data scientist or more like of a data analyst role, you can have like, let's say, less of those skills, of less knowledge, more basic knowledge about those skills. And then once you go up, like roles like senior data scientist or data scientist, you need to have like a wider expertise on all those skills that we've talked about to be successful on that place. So it really depends on the position that you're applying for. But I would say that like a basic level of all those skills, sometimes it works for that. And I would also say that, so there's a lot of companies that look for data scientists, and basically like they do job postings about data scientists, but they're looking about someone that like knows what to do with data. So if you have like a basic knowledge and curiosity and like aim to like take insights out of the data, and you have like basic knowledge about like all the steps of the process, you can be successful for those companies.
I agree. I really agree that right now the world is changing, and we're really looking for all industries are really looking for people that are curious and interested. I can't talk today. Are interested in learning and growing, and even if it's on the job. So I feel like if you come to an interview and show that you're curious and you're willing to try, it really puts, you know, the cherry on top, especially in a field like this that is growing and adapting. There was another part to that question. It said, for an experienced professional looking to transition into data science, will I have to start out as a fresher if I have the skills but no prior experience in data science? I feel like you pretty much touched on that you don't necessarily have to start at the beginning, but exercise those skills still.
Yeah, if you exercise those skills like on your personal time, you could spend like, I don't know, some time on just like doing some types of exercises and just showing that you know them through like public and open source data, then you can show that to the company. So you don't have to like start from the bottom, right? And you can go directly where your skills are at.
Exactly. And I think that kind of spills over into this next question here, that you really don't have to have a degree in this. This is really saying that if you can show right now that you have the skills to make those insights, or to, you know, make those graphs, or to show data, or show that you can create assumptions off of data or whatnot. Yanik, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that it doesn't matter if you have a degree in math or if you have a degree in engineering or whatnot. I feel like if you can actually prove yourself in that initial interview, you might be able to get away with not having it on your resume. That's what this question was. I'm very good at math, but I don't have a degree in math. So how do I show / prove that I'm good at math as one of the needed skills?
And honestly, like most of the companies, when you're doing an interview for anything related to data, like there's a lot of questions that are like math related, so that the employer can see what is your level. And we know like all the companies do that with like all the different skills that are along that process that I show. Basically, with math, questions about coding and questions about like basically machine learning techniques, how with which approaches would you go about the data. So it's not more about like what degree or background do you have, but what skills you can show that you have.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So there's no other questions at the moment. So if you do have a question, please slide it into the chat box. There's the biggest issue is how to get an interview. Most postings want degrees. That's fair. That if you attend most of our Goldmind project events, we do have recruiters, and they show a little bit more of how to get into interviews in different industries, because sometimes it's not always just submitting on Indeed, right? Sometimes it's messaging on LinkedIn, the person who posted, and just saying, you know what, yeah, this is what my resume said, but this is really who I am and this is my skills. So I think going and having a resume that truly represents your skill set is a big part there. But yeah. I just have a question for you, Yanik, and forgive me if this is a little bit putting you on the spot. If you were one of the people in this presentation sitting and listening to you, trying to think of what their next step should be, could you summarize the 3 first things or the 3 first steps that you would do to get into the industry right now? So if you're an engineer, recently either laid off or just, looking to transition, what do you think would be your first 3 steps to get?
The first one I would say is start practicing to truly see where my level of expertise is. So going, for example, like doing a Tableau makeover Monday, just getting some data, or for some personal stuff, just getting some data sets, and just see like where, like what point can I reach with that, to see where your expertise level is, right? Second would be to basically do one of the courses, all of the things that are lacking, right? If I see that like I'm very good at visualizations, so maybe start applying for, I don't know, do some course on like coding, right? If it's like my weakest point, right? And then there's basically only those 2, and then the third one would be like just keep practicing with that knowledge that I've learned on that course. So it's basically just about practice and keep learning about some online courses, and then just like keep doing visualizations and keep working with data to show that you will be able to do that in a job interview.
That's fair. Okay, I have a quick question about that as well. Do you find that the industry of, I guess the data science industry is pretty small? Like, I'm in renewable energy, and I can say that the industry is pretty small here. And if you're in the industry, you almost know everyone. Is that the same in data science?
No, I wouldn't say so.
No?
I think it's big, and it's growing every day more, because like different companies are hiring for like data people. Even like now, grocery stores are hiring for data scientists, right? Because they want people to like being able to analyze their data about the sales. So before, it used to be just like a consultant work, or more as a software company work, but now pretty much every business have data scientists or like equivalent, like data analysts, that are able to like look and analyze their data, right? So it's growing more and more, and it's a community that has like a wide range of industries.
Yeah. I guess the other question on that would be, is it restricted to Alberta? As a lot of data science is, you're just working on your computer. You don't necessarily need to be in an office. Does that mean that our people here should be only looking in Alberta? Or
no, not at all.
Enough to find jobs elsewhere?
There's like opportunities all around the world pretty much for data science. And it's just growing, and that's not just like an Alberta or Calgary thing. It's just like worldwide. here in Alberta, the community it's not as big, but for example, like in Toronto and Vancouver, it's way bigger. And there's like way more companies that are dedicated to it.
That's awesome. So you guys, that's the first thing. Don't limit your search to Alberta. Open it up. Look at all of Canada. See what's out there, because who knows? You don't now, especially with COVID, we know that we can work from home, and why not try and find a job that's based in Ontario? If there's going to be jobs there, why not, right? There's a couple other questions, and then we can wrap this up. And I'll say again, for those who came in a little later, if you have questions that aren't answered, please just reach out to Yanik. I'm sure that he wouldn't mind answering a few questions on LinkedIn. You can see his full name there underneath on his screen, I guess. Yanik Lecroix. So the last two questions that we will answer is there a preference between R and Python, or which is better? Most people I speak to seem to be more towards Python.
Yeah, I mean, I think I answered this question at the beginning. Yeah. There's not really a better. They're both open source programs. They're both really good for like data modeling and data like cleansing and just like working with data in general. I personally work more with R, but there's a lot of people that like also like Python. They're pretty much the same.
That's great. Perfect. Okay. And the last one is, what if I'm great with visualization, but not so good with coding? Is that a bad thing? And should I mention that in an interview?
Yeah, no, it's not a bad thing at all. Like it would be more towards a data analyst position, that it's more oriented in like getting the data, making visualizations out of that, and getting insights out of it, and more or less as a data engineer position that like is more heavy on coding. So just have that in mind when you're applying for jobs, right? That like it would be more as a data analyst role, and less a like data engineer or data scientist. But it's totally fair.
Perfect. Okay, I just saw one more, and I'm sorry because that took so quick for you to answer. I'm gonna let this one slide too. Is Perl used in data science at all? I'm an expert in Perl, but can easily learn Python.
Yeah, I've heard about Perl a couple times, but I've never personally used it. The thing that I'm gonna say is just that like every coding language can be used for data science. It can be easier or harder to apply data science models on it, but it can be any software can be like any coding language can be applied to data science.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll cut the questions off there, and if you have the other question, I know that there's a little bit more about R and Python. I again go onto LinkedIn, find Yanik, and ask him there. I'm sure he'll be happy with that. So thank you everyone for joining today. We again will be sending this out on LinkedIn and to all of you on our YouTube channel. So for those who didn't hear that, you'll get the presentation and the link to our YouTube channel. And I hope that this is giving you a little bit more of a light at the end of the tunnel. This is, with COVID and all of this, muck that's happening here in Alberta, I'm really excited that this industry is growing so fast, and that, we have so many numbers people in Alberta. I feel like we've got just the crew for it. So if that's not exciting, I don't know what is. So have a great weekend. Thank you, Yanik. That was fantastic. And again, I encourage all of you to connect on LinkedIn. If you can see some names here, it's always good to make new connections. So don't hesitate to link with me as well. All right. Take care, everyone, and have a great day, great weekend. Hopefully it's not too rainy.